Welcome back uh, to Georgia. Looking at the Russo Ukrainian conflict, which is being for the express purpose of depriving Ukraine of some of its sovereign soil and imposing Putin's tyranny there and his force atrocities. Now, war crimes have probably been committed in every war. Not to say they're acceptable, but they have to be expected. And a decent military has to investigate and punish these things when their troops have committed these crimes. But the Russian army, I'm afraid to say, is egregiously bad in committing these crimes on a huge scale, and there being almost total impunity for any crimes against humanity perpetrated by the Russian military goes back centuries. Anyway, on to the Ukraine conflict. The notable thing today was the attacks in Moldova. The Republic of Moldova, which is Europe's poorest country, is sandwiched in between Romania and Ukraine. Some has been part of Romania, some has been part of the Russian Empire. And there's this illegal breakaway, putrid little statelet, the Republic of Transnistria, which is illegally occupied by Russia, and that's the only reason it still exists, and is just a conduit for people trafficking and other crimes. And 1,500 Russian troops are there, and Moldova's a small and weak country and dare not provoke the Russian bear. So that's why that situation is there. Putin is obviously telling the lie every day that his illegal occupiers are peacekeepers. They're not. If you want peacekeepers, you go to the United Nations, you get neutral troops, soldiers are acceptable to both sides. It can't be the invaders, they can't be the peacekeepers, they're aggressors. So some attacks there, but it appears to be against the Transnistrian regime, as in that's the Putin-backed puppet regime there. So was it Ukrainians attacking them? Presumably, just like the Ukrainians have been attacking into Ukraine, and then Russia's been saying this is terrorism, which is yet another flagrant lie. As Russia started this war, Ukraine is absolutely entitled to counterattack, attack being the best form of defense. So the war's obviously not going well for Russia. That doesn't guarantee they'll lose eventually. Sheer numbers may eventually tell. Now, their strategy is used to surround a city and pound it and just blow up every single building. I mean, I don't think war can be glamorous, but sometimes it could be glorious. Does that seem sick? It could be impressive, a war of maneuver, some lightning moves or whatever, but this is anything but. Which buildings are enemy combatants in? Which ones are soldiers, civilians in? Well, we don't know. Let's just blow up every single building. Make sure we get them in the end. That'll take weeks, months, and by then they'll run out of everything: food, water, medicine, ammunition. It'll kill an awful lot of civilians through the blasts, but also through starvation and so on. But we will get there in the end. It's a slow but effectual strategy, even though it wastes a huge amount of ammunition. And the Russians have expended an enormous amount of ammunition. They can make more, but it's going to take them time. I mean, they've obviously lost a lot of tanks. They lost about 2 years worth of tank production, about a year's worth of plane production. Having said that, obviously they can ramp up their production. They can produce more than they usually do because now they're in a war situation. But even there's a limit to how fast they can produce it. What you can't produce so fast are pilots who take months, indeed years, to train. So it's been surprising how circumspect the Russians have been used to their air force, held back, suffered only superficial losses, but they're not willing to risk that. But I'm a bit worried about Sergei Lavrov saying, oh, there could be a third World War. Now, obviously, that's meant to intimidate Western countries from doing what they're absolutely entitled to, which is arming Ukraine. There have been many proxy wars between Russia and the United States, and they're actually correct. Lavrov is telling the truth for once. Yes, it is a proxy war, and this has happened many times before. I mean, in the Korean War, in the Vietnam War, and the 1980s Afghan conflict, perhaps numerous other conflicts, that indeed was happening. One superpower fighting and the other one providing arms to the enemy of its enemy, or indeed both proxy war, both sides arming different sides. Let's say India and Pakistan, the United States arming Pakistan, the Soviets arming India, something like that. But that's no justification for directly attacking the other side, the armorer of your enemy. And now Putin said, well, we have the right to strike inside NATO territory with arming the Ukrainians. No, you don't. That would be a third world war, and Russia would be starting it. Who can Russia rely on to actually fight on their side in the third world war? Belarus. That's about it. There's a collective security treaty organization, 6 countries, the others being Armenia, Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and Tajikistan. So the others could say, no, 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 you're not defending yourself. You're actually attacking into NATO. We're backing off here. I mean, even if Russia were attacked, they might say we're sitting this one out because they don't want to be nuked. That might be the end of the CSTO. I don't even know if North Korea would fight on their side. I'm surprised. I mean, the North Koreans haven't done more. They are slightly ramping up tensions, thinking the West is distracted, and we can also help our Russian friends by creating a diversion in the Far East. So Western countries can't concentrate too much on supporting Ukrainian freedom. China, I really don't think China would fight on their side. China's policy is actually surprisingly Pacific, considering how mighty they are. Yes, they build these artificial islands in the South China Sea and claim it as their territorial waters, building an airbase. But they could have invaded a lot more countries. They had that brief conflict with Vietnam in 1979. There's been some skirmishing across the border with India, but they have the military strength to take several of their neighbors, and they don't do it. I mean, I'm not just talking about the ones which are US military allies. I mean, they could have absorbed Laos if they wanted quite easily. They could have conquered the whole of Myanmar and Nepal, wherever they want, but they don't do that. So they're actually quite circumspect, which is why Russia going around like a bull in the china shop does not please them, the Chinese, because it's driving up oil and gas prices, it's driving up food prices. That impacts them. Moreover, their Western customer countries have got less of a disposable income to be purchasing Chinese manufacturers. The other thing Russia started doing is using that oil and gas weapon. So they demanded a month ago that unfriendly countries pay for these commodities in Russian rubles, which would compel the Western countries to purchase rubles with hard currencies, euros and dollars and so forth, pay that and then pay in rubles to the Russian Federation. That would raise the price of the ruble, so they refused to do so because the contract says we pay in dollars or euros or whatever it is. And no, you can't unilaterally rewrite the contract. I mean, Moscow is notorious as just ripping up the contract, shamelessly reneging on their solemn undertakings, which is why you think, well, what's the point in signing a deal with them? We know they're going to break it if they can get away with it. And then Russia said, okay, we're cutting off oil and gas supplies to Bulgaria and Poland. At 24 hours notice, they did that. So that's Russia breaking the agreement again. Now, this is a real headache. These countries are heavily reliant on Russian oil and gas. Poland has got coal. That's going to mean more pollution. They can reduce usage. They can buy more energy from elsewhere, and they can use more renewables. But you can't increase in renewables that rapidly. And so other countries need to be helping Poland and Russia, Poland and Bulgaria out by providing more energy, by giving them more money, whatever else you can do. But notice that Russia's only doing to these ones. Poland is very hostile. Bulgaria, they think, is a bit of a waverer, a Slavonic Orthodox Christian country, a former communist country, the only Eastern Bloc country which absorption into the Soviet Union was seriously considered, that might come back into their orbit, despite being an EU and NATO member. They've been caught spying there a lot, and they also find it fairly easy to recruit agents there, bought a lot of property there. Bulgarians find it quite easy to learn Russian. The older generation speak fluent Russian, and so on. But might actually backfire and drive them deeper into the Western camp. But they're only doing it to these two, thinking they might divide NATO and the EU. Some which are saying, okay, let's settle with Russia, and others which don't. So it's very important that Russia doesn't succeed in sowing disunity there. So goodness, because some people talk about how about Western countries refuse to buy all energy, maybe all products from Russia, and nobody's done that. The United States is doing it. The UK is going to do it by the end of this year. The rest of the EU is going to do it by the end of 2030. That's the idea. But if we did that right now, that would wreck the Russian economy even more. They've already shrunk by 10%. Since February, they were shrink by a further 10%, and very difficult to sustain the war effort. And they wouldn't be able to pay a lot of state salaries, pay for loads of things. There'd be serious suffering. That could bring such large demonstrations that might even topple the regime. I don't think it would, but it might. You look at countries like Saddam Hussein's Iraq or North Korea, countries under severe sanctions for decades, and it doesn't bring them down. You look, Assad still there 11 years after the insurrection. But it would certainly enfeeble the regime, and it would have to be even more oppressive because it would have no goodies left to dish out. And it would really bring home to people, you pay a heavy price when you commit this war of naked aggression. And EU countries could do it. It would cost the economy a few percent, but it is doable, and it might stop the war, at least hugely de-escalate to maybe just give a little bit of Donbass. Anyway, but it seems like Western countries are not up for that. But Putin's done it first, but he's going to use the oil gas weapon by cutting off various unfriendly countries. Now, in solidarity, other EU countries say, well, fine, we're stopping all Russian energy imports right now, but there's no sign of it. So I'm glad the Ukraine war is going reasonably well for Ukraine. Western countries just need to ship weapons by the ton to Ukraine. So Russia pays a very, very heavy price. The only thing that might change Putin's mind is he sees that it's just not worth it. It's just unsustainable. The losses are just unbearable. And this is actually jeopardizing his whole regime. The losses are that painful. Even if we don't get there, he's obviously got to pay a heavy price, blunt their ability to attack other countries, seriously degrade their military, permanently impoverish their country. And it's a pity because they're good Russians and their innocent people are going to suffer as well, just as there's some bad Ukrainians. Anyway, Putin and his coterie is all on them, his Camarilla, who've egged him on to commit all these barbarities. Well, Putin, would he worry about his people? If it threatens his hold on power, I think he does. Obviously, he's completely inhumane, doesn't give a damn how many people have been killed. Obviously, he's killed enough Russian citizens as it is. And he's having them live in relative poverty. But, as Disraeli said, the castle is unsafe if the cottage is unhappy. It comes a point when poverty could gravely undermine the stability of the regime. Right. Thank you for watching. So please donate to me on PayPal, georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Toodaloo.